gosh, Jesus must have been just such a hate monger and a warlord, because he encouraged his disciples to go buy swords. Man, that Jesus, what a radical.
They were purely decorative. Because he never said use the swords, just buy them. So he was a collector.
Right.
He was a collector.
Pistols, prayer, and potluck. This is Armed Lutheran Radio.
Hey folks, welcome to another edition of Armed Lutheran Radio, a show about guns, hunting, competitive shooting, the natural right of self-defense, and what God's Word says about the issues surrounding gun rights and gun ownership. I'm your host, Lloyd Bailey, the Armed Lutheran, and this is episode number 360. Thank you so much for making Armed Lutheran Radio a part of your week again this week. And for those of you who are new, welcome aboard. I hope you enjoy what you hear today and that you will come back for more next week. For those of you who are returning, welcome back. Glad to have you here. This week we have a variety show with content from most of the cast. We have a Ballistic Minute from Sergeant Bill. We have new motivations from Mia. Pastor Bennett, unfortunately, was not able to be with us. Unfortunate for us, but not unfortunate for members of his congregation whom he is serving. Some extra services, I think a wedding and potentially a funeral that he was preparing for, so he is not going to be with us this week. But he is doing what is important, the most important thing, and that is serving his congregation, and he will hopefully be back with us next week. Before we get started, I do want to give a big thank you and a big shout out to the members of the Reformation Gun Club, the people who make this show possible. Paul from McKinney, Texas, Robert from Elk River, Minnesota, Kevin from Marion, Iowa, Scott from Sheridan, Wyoming, Michael from Janesville, Minnesota, David from Kennesaw, Georgia, Sam from Milton, Washington, Dan from Indian Trail, North Carolina, and George from Hammond, Louisiana are our kind of the shout-outs for this week. Thank you to these wonderful people and many more. I just realized there were a bunch of people in this list this week that are regulars at our online hangouts. And if you would like to be join us for our online hangouts and meet some of these awesome, cool people, please consider becoming a member of the Reformation Gun Club. We are listener funded, as I mention every week. We don't have any sponsors. We don't have any advertising. We rely on the generosity of our listeners to keep the lights on. And the people that I just mentioned and many more, through their monthly and yearly contributions, help us pay the bills and keep doing what we do. And they get, as a residual benefit, in addition to the satisfaction of knowing that they helped keep the lights on for us and helped make everything possible, they also get some cool Armed Lutheran swag. They get access to hundreds of hours of exclusive content. If you are a regular on our website, or if you are just visiting our website, you'll notice content listed there that is member content. Those posts, those audio and video posts, are only available for our members. Plus, there's some cool Armed Lutheran swag. And like I said, we do our monthly online hangouts with the members of the Reformation Gun Club. If you want to know what those are about or what they're like, go check them out on YouTube. It's always a great time, and we welcome more and more new faces, and we would love to have you come and join us as well for as little as $15.17 a year. That's a little bit of a Lutheran inside joke, $15.17. You can be a member as well. You can take advantage of all these benefits and come hang out with us once a month for the online hangouts. Check it out at armedlutheran.us/gun club. We would love to have you come and join us. All right, before I turn this over to Bill and Mia, I did want to react briefly to the recent shooting in Allen, Texas at an outlet mall, which resulted at last, as of this recording, as far as I know, in the deaths of 8 people. This is very close to us, about 30 minutes away. It's not 30 miles. It's it's around the Metroplex from us. We don't shop there. We don't go out shopping much, but we've been there. We've been through there plenty of times. The outlet mall is near a large shopping complex with lots of restaurants and high-end stores. It's also got the local Cabela's, the arena where our local minor league Allen Americans hockey team plays. They canceled their home playoff game that was scheduled for the night of the shooting. And since we're still in the 72-hour window after that event, I'm not gonna comment much. I suspect, though, that this is going to get the memory hole treatment that we talk about on the show, because as we find out more about the shooter, I think you're going to find that this doesn't fit the narrative. But still, here is what we know as of this point, and this is being reported in multiple outlets, so these are the facts. The shooter, whose name I'm not going to mention and we do not mention on the show, was a Hispanic male. The shooter, according to local and national news reports, was aborted in roughly the 132nd trimester. He was 33 years old and until recently apparently still living at home with mom and dad in Dallas. Dallas police reportedly required the use of an interpreter to interview the parents about their son's behavior. So that, I think, will tell you something. He stepped out of his car and began firing on shoppers outside the outlet mall, out in the open. Those are some of the reasons why I think this story is quietly going to disappear from the news, and the focus is going to remain on the guns. And because talking about the shooter, as is usually the case, undermines the left's argument on gun control. I would like to comment briefly on some of the coverage, though, and some of the common tropes that we see employed in these situations. We often hear about how lax gun laws are in places like Texas, and that states like Texas, which I will remind you if you don't know this, is larger than every country in the European Union, and which has the 6th largest economy on planet Earth, and which has 1,000 miles of unprotected border with Mexico, thanks to the laziness and stubbornness of the Biden administration. States like Texas, the media tells us, have higher numbers of gun deaths because of our gun laws. So there's some points that should be made on that. First, in Texas, most of the same gun laws, all the federal laws, obviously, about guns, that apply to buying and possessing firearms, they apply in Texas just like everywhere else. The mandatory background checks, the age restrictions on felons in possession of firearms, drug abusers, domestic abusers, non-citizens, illegal aliens. Those are all prohibited, and those prohibitions still apply in Texas. Yes, you can buy a gun at a gun show without a background check from unscrupulous private dealers. You can do the same thing in Chicago, or LA, or Trenton, or Boston, or New York. Now, in those places, you may have to look a little harder or go to some seedy neighborhoods, but you can get a gun illegally if you try. There's no law that will stop that, even in the most ardent gun control cities and states around the country, and around the world, to be honest. The same laws about carrying guns in schools or on federal property in federal buildings still applies in Texas. That's not unique. I mean, those things are not like off the books just because we're in Texas, just because Texas is more pro-gun. Texas does require places that restrict carry to post signs. Now, this shooting took place outdoors, so that fact makes absolutely no difference. Texas is an open carry state, though we have very few people who actually do so, despite the monumental fight and stupidity of groups like Open Carry Texas in pushing open carry in Texas. I am still yet to see anyone open carrying. Now, Texans can carry a handgun, open or concealed, without a permit in certain areas. For those without a permit, there are more places that are off limits than for those of us who carry with a permit. We have very specific signage that restricts your ability to carry, depending on whether you're carrying openly or whether you're carrying concealed. If you're carrying without a permit, any sign, any no guns sign will block you from carrying in that place. So if you want to carry in more places, get a permit. That's all I'm saying. Texans can carry rifles openly in public. However, they cannot point them at people or fire rounds at them. That, as everywhere else in the country and around the world, well, in most parts of the world, is illegal. And carrying a rifle in the parking lot of a shopping mall will result in cops coming to hassle you for being a moron. Now, aside from those things, what laws do the media think are too lax? What law would have prevented this? Now, the dirty little secret that they don't want to tell you is the fact that you can own a gun at all is the reason. That's why. But there are points to be made on the pro-gun side of this tragedy as well. And this is something you've heard us talk about plenty of times. So forgive me if you have heard this already, but I think it bears repeating. We often hear this hackneyed slogan I absolutely hate, first coined by that wizened grifter Wayne LaPierre, that the only thing that stops a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. And like I said, if you've listened long enough, you know that I hate with all the fiber of my being. I hate that slogan. It's used in defense of the right to carry a firearm by common citizens. It is true, but only to a point. And this is why I hate it. If there were any good guys with guns in Allen, Texas that day, they did not stop the bad guy with a gun. Remember all the things I mentioned earlier. They apply to that shopping mall in Allen, Texas. Texans are allowed to open carry. Texans are allowed to conceal carry with a permit and in some places without. Texas has very high rates of gun ownership, very high rates of carry permits. And yet, this piece of garbage was only ventilated when police arrived. A good guy with a gun, yes, but a good guy with a badge as well. The good guy with a gun myth is one that we need to get rid of, or we need to find some way to modify. And here's why. The left argues all the time that we could end gun violence in America if we just limited people's access to guns. The gun is the problem. And as we on the pro-gun side argue, the gun is simply a tool. It doesn't turn people into killers magically. It also doesn't turn people into heroes. What's important is not the gun. It's the willingness and the ability to use it. That is the point. Anyway, that's what's on my mind today. And I apologize for posting this a little bit late. It has been a crazy weekend. Had a great weekend with with friends and family at in Oklahoma at a graduation, and then bit off a little more than I could chew doing some spring cleaning in the garage, and then spent today practically in traction. Not feeling like coming up here in the office and sitting in front of the microphone to put this all together. But here I am. And again, apologies for the delay, but I hope you enjoy the rest of the show and you think that the wait was worth it. Before I do pass this baton off to my contributors, I do want to extend our deepest condolences, our thoughts and prayers to the families and the victims of who were affected by this terrible tragedy in Allen, Texas this week. All right, that's all from me. I'll turn it over to my awesome cast, whom you have not heard in a while, Mia and Sergeant Bill. Be sure to tune in next week for another episode of Armed Lutheran Radio. Until then, keep shooting, keep praying. We'll talk to you next time.
Time now for Mia's Motivations with Mia Anstein.
Hey guys, I hope you are just doing fabulous. I personally am super excited and stoked because I just got back from Texas, and while I was there, I actually made a stop by and saw the head armed Lutheran and his sweet young daughter. I took a pit stop and went to church in Texas, and it was a great event at a wonderful location, and just a great way to cap out my journey while I was down there. So, why was I in Texas? Well, it was the annual She Never Quit event, which was presented by the Women's Outdoor Media Association. And this is an event that I have taught at for many years. I've actually been presented with their Founders Award for donating my time and efforts and supporting our community and all the outreach and many things that I do. But while I was there, I was teaching archery this year, and I taught some new students as well as some that have been back repetitively. Some of these ladies come year after year to the event, and even though they've already learned some of the things, they want to get better, and they also just really love the camaraderie and the conversation that goes on while we're there. So I will get back to that in just a second. But before that, I wanted to let you know kind of what the event is, because I think it's something that if you're a woman, you may love to attend. And if you're a man, maybe you would like to send your wife, daughter, or some woman in your life to the event. So She Never Quit. It was founded years ago as a way to raise money. And it started out with Melanie Luttrell and Deb Ferns and Marsha Petrie-Sue. And these three women got together and they wanted to know what they could do for others in the community. So they brainstormed, and there is a Team Never Quit podcast. Some of you may have heard of that. But the She Never Quit, it is a fundraiser. And the event starts out with women showing up, and there's a meet and greet that night. And the logistics of the couple of days that they're there are all laid out. So day one starts out with a safety briefing, and that is done by Kay Michalek herself. She has been there from the beginning at the She Never Quit event. She provides a safety briefing, and then the logistics of the day that to come, and actually there are 2 days, those are laid out. So the women start out at the range, and this is live fire range. They have shotgun, they have hunting rifle, they have 3 gun stations. Sometimes there's a 50 cal that they can shoot. The stations kind of vary. As I said, they try to kind of evolve this to help the ladies stay engaged. Some of the sponsors are Staccato, Ruger, Patriot Defense. There's a number, and I feel bad because I didn't plan to give a list of the sponsors. So anyways, a lot of firearms are there. And then they do that in the morning. And then in the afternoon, they get to go shoot Umarex air guns. They shoot archery with me. This year, they learned how to clean guns. So that was a wonderful thing to do. that was sponsored by Otis Technologies. They also get to learn some self-defense and self-awareness techniques and skills, as well as trauma stop the bleed scenarios. So there's always a different thing thrown in there that some people, if you haven't experienced it, you really would like to. And back to that networking and conversation. Part of the event is an auction. There is a fundraiser, and money goes to various organizations, to some of the women's police officers, to retired military officers, and these are women who maybe have families and they're trying to get back into society and be productive citizens. And it's just amazing the stuff that they donate to. Those are just a couple of them. But while we're there, there's that auction fundraiser, and then there's also networking time. And one of the evenings while we were there, I was sitting on the back patio. We were at the Rest Yourself Ranch in Mineral Wells, Texas. And I was sitting there with a few of the ladies. One of them was the renowned Kay Michalek, and she was talking about collectors' firearms. And specifically, we were talking about Henry lever actions, and somehow it got into collecting firearms and some of these ornate guns that maybe you just don't want to shoot. And this is something I want to pose to you as a question. I would love to know if you have one of these ornate guns, one of these collector's models. Do you shoot that, or do you hang it on the wall? Because this is something that my husband and I have talked about over the years. And I've always been the one who's like, it's too pretty to shoot, put it away. I have plenty of other guns, so like, well, whatever. Let's get back to Kay. Kay was talking about Jerry, and Jerry is similar to me. They have these collector's guns, and she got one and he got one. He opted to not shoot it. However, she opted to shoot hers. And her daughter Justin was there. And they kind of were talking about hers is more valuable to her family because it's a gun she has shot. And this is also something that they've talked about in guns they've received from other family members that have been passed down from the generations. They value that firearm more if it's something that was granddad's gun that granddad got his whitetail with or something like that. So that's just something that was kind of very eye-opening to me as far as looking at the value of a gun. And it's something that I thought maybe you would want to ponder, because it's something maybe I should let my daughter know, like, hey, this is the rifle that I got this bull elk with, or maybe this is the bow that I use to shoot this with. Just different things like that. I think it would make a difference. The story behind the gun makes it more valuable. Anyways, that is just my 2 cents about it. And now I may have changed my mind about what I might want to go hunting with, what I might want to take to the range. And when I'm practicing, maybe I will use one of those fancy ones. We'll see. Stay tuned. Have a great one. I hope you check out She Never Quit. If you're interested in sending somebody to that, the next one will be in April of 2024. It's April 18th to April 21st of next year. Anyways, have a great one, and I'll talk to you again soon.
You can read more from Mia, watch her YouTube videos, or check out her podcast, Mac Outdoors with Mia and Leah, at miaandstein.com. Time now for another Ballistic Minute with Sergeant Bill Sylvia.
Hey everybody, I'm Sergeant Bill, and this is your Ballistic Minute. It's been a while since I've spoke to you guys. Miss you. Hope everybody's doing well. So recently, I got a couple of new guns that I'm going to review. Today I'm going to review the Palmetto State Armory Dagger. So the Dagger is basically their interpretation of a Gen 3 Glock 19. And I mean, Glock 19's pretty dang good. How could the Dagger be any better? Well, the first thing you notice is the frame. It's got what I would call micro stippling on it, and it's really nice. So it's got good texture without being overly aggressive, and it's not textured so little that it doesn't do anything. The grip frame itself has cutouts on the bottom so you can strip the mags out if you get a problem with double feed or something like that, which is nice. But it's not that 2x4 shape that most people that don't like Glocks would say a Glock frame feels like. It's the best way to describe it is it's closer to like a SIG 320 compact grip. It's a little bit rounder on the sides and a little bit rounder on the front and back. And it's also got almost like a single finger groove, which some people love, some people hate. It's interesting. I don't know if it's totally necessary, but it's pretty good undercut under the trigger guard, and the trigger guard is completely different than on a Glock. It's more similar to a Polymer 80 grip, which, in fact, it doesn't fit in any Glock holsters. It'll only fit in a Polymer 80 holster, mostly because of that trigger guard. Now, the trigger's not like a Glock. It doesn't have that safety hinge dingus that's in the middle. It's more like the Smith & Wesson hinged trigger, but they did it much better. It's very wide and very flat, and you can't really even feel the hinge much when you pull the trigger. It's pretty nice. The internals are all Gen 3 Glock stuff, which is really nice. So it's, if there's anything you want to replace or break, it's easy to get parts for. The slide that I got has an RMR cut, suppressor height sights, some front serrations, some front slide cut windows, little small, maybe take out a little bit of weight, and it's got a threaded barrel, as well as the frame having a rail, looks like a 1913 rail for any lights or lasers or any frame attachments you want to hang on there. The trigger on my scale came in at about 5.5 pounds, maybe a hair under that, and it feels like a stock Glock trigger, which it should because it's all Gen 3 Glock parts. Took it straight to the range when I got it, put a couple drops of oil on it, and put 100 to 200 rounds through it right away, and it was flawless. Not a single problem at all. Shot really well. Now here comes the best part. This whole thing came in, depending on what sales you get or when you buy it. I actually bought the full completed frame and then the full upper separately and then put them together. And you're looking at about $300, give or take $30 or $40, depending on any sales you might get or daily deals at Palmetto State Armory, which is pretty dang good for something that shoots like a Glock, carries like a Glock, is reliable as a Glock. And I think it's fantastic. To me, if you're looking for a really good carry gun on a budget, it would be really, really hard to beat the PSA Dagger. They've got it in multiple colors. I got mine all in black. They've got greens. They've got the different browns and tans and all that stuff, and different optic cuts. I mean, this is pretty fantastic. I don't know how you beat it. So if you're in the market for a very low price but really, really well done Glock 19 carry gun style mid-size gun, I mean, this could be a range toy, this could be a home defense gun. You could use it for whatever because it's that Glock 19 size. It's pretty much the jack of all trades. I mean, with the threaded barrel, you could throw a comp on it and shoot with a compensator if somebody's recoil sensitive, or even in some competitions now, throw a dot on it and it's ready to go. I'm Sergeant Bill. This has been your Ballistic Minute.
Sergeant Bill Sylvia is a veteran of the Dallas Police Force and a masterclass competitive shooter. You can check out his YouTube videos at armedlutheran.us/Sergeant Bill. For show notes, be sure to visit our website at www.armedlutheran.us. Check out the Facebook page, The Armed Lutheran, or join our Facebook group, Fans of Armed Lutheran Radio. If you like what you hear, please leave us a comment on our feedback page at armedlutheran.us/feedback or a review on iTunes and let us know what you think. Thank you for listening to Armed Lutheran Radio, a member of the Self-Defense Radio Network.